Hello, everyone, and welcome to Foundation. I know I took a little bit of a hiatus last week, and some things did come up, and it was a little hard for me to get things going and get things started again, because as I started studying this chapter, I realized that I couldn't really take you through the whole thing all at once without it being another 45-minute video or longer. So I've cut this into a few pieces. We are going to go through the first verse. We're going to go through verse 3 through 25, and today's title for the message is literally practical, and that is that we are going to take the literal position of actual studying the Bible and what it's literally saying and what's happening. And I'm going to also show that there is some spiritual referencing to determining not necessarily an absolute motivation, but we can see that the motivations are there and clear. So let's go ahead and let's get started with Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. And God said, "Let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day." God gives purpose to the light and darkness to establish time. And I think in that I kind of agree, and I'm going to show you guys a quote from Matthew Henry, and I'm going to share it with you just now. And basically, I'll read it to you. Does our day honor God from, I guess you can say, from 12 to 24? You know, from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Are we having God honoring time? Are we making the time to honor him? And Matthew Henry says that he is the Lord of time, and will be so till day and night shall come to an end, and the stream of time be swallowed up in the ocean of eternity. Let us acknowledge God in the constant succession of day and night, and consecrate both to his honor by working for him every day and resting in him every night and meditating in his law day and night. And that reference to meditating in his law day and night, you'll find that reference in Joshua chapter 1 verse 7, and you'll also see it in Psalm chapter 1 verse 2. And basically the psalmist and the writer of Joshua is declaring that this is something that we have to commit to daily, that we have to commit to honoring him as to honor the day, because he established time, and we have to honor him for all time. Next we move to verses 6 through 8. And God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning the second day." One of the things I want to make clear is that sometimes I know that we read the scriptures and we look at it and we're like, that's a lot of repetition and it doesn't really make too much sense. Well, we take the word expanse and we find its Hebrew meaning. Now, the H8064 is what we call a Strong's number. Dr. James Strong actually numbered all of the words in the Bible. If you see an H, it's a Hebrew word. If it's a G instead, it would be the Greek word. And then here he gives us the Hebrew word samayim, dual of unused singular shameh, from an unused root meaning to be lofty, the sky. In other words, this is the Hebrew word for cosmos. We would see this in the Hebrew word cosmos, when in the New Testament it refers to the heavens or a celestial body, when it references stars in the sky, things of that nature. So what we're actually witnessing here in verses 6 through 8, we are seeing that God is separating the waters. He's separating the molecules. That's really, you have to look at it scientifically, and I don't want to be here for the next 30 minutes trying to put you to sleep, trying to explain the science behind it, because chances are within the first 10 minutes I'd fall asleep. So just basically the way you have to look at it is God is molecularly removing particles from the water and actually filling our atmosphere so that we can have a clarity of the day and night sky. In it, we see that God created the atmosphere. In other words, God kind of set the mood. That's just a nice way of really looking at it. And we see here, the psalmist declares, here's your little scripture reference to that. The psalmist declares in Psalm 147:4, He determines the number of the stars. He gives to all of them their names. Moving on to Genesis 1:9 through 10. And God said, Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together He called seas. And God saw that it was good. This is the second time in this chapter that we see, and God saw that it was good. He mentions that when He talks about the light being good as well. But He didn't say anything about from the expanse up to now when the land is separating from the oceans, and He's actually creating the continental view of what we have as of an atlas at this point in time. We see now that God is saying that that's good. And what basically it is that you have to kind of take verses 6 through 10 and almost make them occur at the same time. But I think it's beautiful because we see that when God said that He saw that the light was good, He didn't say that the establishment of time was good until now. So what you really have to really see, if you can really see and not take it out of context and look at it as a whole, you'll actually see that verses 3 all the way to verse 10, God is doing an entire work that when He's finally separated the land from the seas, He sees that it is good. He sees that now He has a solid foundation to build on. At this point, God has actually created from what has already been created. He is creating from what He had already created. In other words, God made something and then He expanded or expounded on it. And that we can see because He already created the heavens and the earth. And now He is expounding on His creation, and He's creating a canvas-like environment. The beauty, we see it in Job 38, verses 4 through 6, when He says, Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched a line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? God is talking to Job in this instance, and hopefully one day we'll get to the book of Job. I think we'll have a lot of fun with it. We see here that God is answering Job, and He's basically kind of, at this point, God is making Himself known. But this is basically a scripture reference to what we have from verse 6 through 10. And it is basically that when He laid out the measurement, when He stretched the line upon it, He said that it was good. It was a solid foundation to build on. He was the one who was laying the foundation. He was the one expounding on His creation. Now we go verses 11 through 13. And God said, Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees, and bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their kind, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning the third day. So, what we're gathering from here, and basically what we can see is that this is actually God creating a system now. Now, remember, what he did in the first 2 days was he created time, and he's created a canvas, a perfect canvas in which to continue to expand and expound on. And the first thing he does is he puts not just life, but life that procreates. The first sign of procreation, and it was good. Many times in our society we see, and this is kind of where I get the spiritual connection to a literal teaching, and it is that in this world today, procreation is kind of seen as something that's kind of scoffed at. It's like, why do you want kids? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be a part of a quote-unquote family unit? And God sees procreation. He sees the family unit. He sees a fruitful species. He sees it as good. And that's something that is God-honoring. The family is a God-honoring thing. Just like how we need to honor God throughout the day, we need to honor God in our families. Now moving on to verses 14 through 18. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. We actually see the creation of the sun and moon occur on the fourth day. There is speculation about the light and the darkness that's mentioned in verse 3. And again, that goes back to theory, and we're not going to go there this time around, because in reality I don't want to inundate you with theory. I would rather just go over this literal practical at the moment. I can cover that maybe for another topic, if maybe I just want to take a quick break from boring you to death with my studies. But what we're gathering here is that God has established time already. So why would he create these two greater lights? This great light to rule, the greatest of the light to rule during the day, which is our sun, and then the lesser light, which is our moon, to rule at night. Why would he do that? I think at this point what we're seeing again is more expanding on creation, because here the lights are actually serving more than just a construct of time. They're also giving seasons, days, and years. It's less about day and night, and it's more about establishing a cyclical life. I'll say it, the circle of life. At this point, remember, all that is yielding fruit and bearing right now are vines and trees and plant life. At this moment, vegetation has overtaken most of the land, and there's also, I believe, there is also vegetation under the water as well. So God, now having established vegetation on earth, is giving the vegetation a life cycle. In other words, now it's not only going to be producing fruit, but it is also going to be producing fruit in its season. It's now going to be growing or withering at this point from the seasons from the days to the years. This is establishing, not just it's not just planting season. It's also observing, spring and summer and fall and winter. You're now experiencing something bigger. In other words, upon the expounding, it's not just it's light and it's dark. Now it's light and it's dark, and there's warmth, or there's cool, or the tides and how they measure. Again, I'm getting a little scientific, but basically now these two lights are existing, and it actually has a deeper spiritual connection. And I believe that the spiritual connection is that it does not matter how bright the light is, and it doesn't matter how dark the night is, there's still a lesser light. I think this is kind of a lesson on common grace. The greater and lesser are still lights. In other words, we still have a moon that will light up the sky. Now, we know by science that the sun actually, that the moon reflects the light from the sun, and then we kind of get that reflection drawn back to us. But we also understand that that light is not just for, I would say, not for just the children of God. That light, that lesser light, that light in the dark times, that in the darkest night, you still have moonlight. You still have light over something. And that takes me to Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 to 45. And if you want, just take a read at it. But basically it is that the rain falls on the righteous and the wicked. These lights were not exclusive. These lights were actually inclusive to all of creation. I would read all of this, but basically what we get in these next 5 verses is the creatures that live in the water and the birds in the sky, the livestock, the creeping things. God made the beasts of the earth. He made the beasts in the water. Yes, he made the sharkies, We have to kind of live with that, but and he made the lions, yes, and he made those annoying things called mosquitoes, yes, he did. But at the end, God saw that it was good. Now, let's go back. Let's take a quick step back, really, just for a moment, and realize that God, from verse 3, has been expanding and expounding on his creation. That takes us to God's order in creation. Think about it. He's establishing time. It's the first thing that he does. Then he's establishing an atmosphere. He's separating the waters from the dry land, and he's creating a canvas. And then to expound on that canvas, he creates vegetation. He then creates a cycle of events in which that creation that vegetation can serve its purpose. And then he creates the creatures that eat from it. He's creating everything. See, God's order in creation. We're not seeing that God, it's not like, okay, God made a squirrel. And then that squirrel got hungry. And then God's like, well, now it's hungry. What do I do? There is an order of events that is taking place while people focus on the days, which I will get to in the next segment. When people are struggling with the days, they don't realize the order. God didn't just make a chicken that couldn't lay an egg. He basically created everything for the purpose of what we will actually cover in our last segment when we get to verse 26 to finish out the chapter and the creation of humanity. what I want to really talk about at this moment right now is that we have to understand that God has an order to creation, and it starts with establishing time, creating an atmosphere. Then he went so far, he separates land from sea, creates vegetation, creates a cycle so that that vegetation can continuously sustain, and it has its own life cycle, and then he creates everything that's going to be eating from that. That was not by chance. That's literally ordered creation. Because again, God didn't just create he saw that the whole world was full of water. How easy it would have been just to make everything fish. But then how would they eat? What were the atmospheric conditions like? What if, what if and what if and what if, and we live with these what ifs. God didn't leave anything to what if. God's order in creation reveals his sovereignty. That while we can sit here and say, but what if he had done this and what if he had done that? And God said, I didn't. Exactly what he told Job. Where were you when all these things were made? Because last I checked, I made it all and it was good. And I expounded on it and it was good. Like there's no other way we can't really finagle past the ifs, because God set the order and he reveals his sovereignty in creation. We see his power because he's creating and expanding. We see his omnipresence. Sorry, I was looking for the word. Omnipresence. We see his omnipresence because we see how he is involved in every facet of creation. And then we see his omniscience. And I think his omniscience is the one thing we struggle with the most. Why? Because him being a know-it-all makes him being an all-knowing makes him a know-it-all. And being a know-it-all, it kind of makes it seem like we can't really second guess him. And we love second guessing God. But God did not leave anything to chance when he was working on creation. Now, I just want to thank you guys for listening. Again, I will be expounding on this with the up and coming episodes. I will be tackling evolution and creationism, which means I'm going to be kind of going through this again. And then the next one will be humanity created with a purpose. It's going to be finishing out the first chapter, and we can continue and move on. And continue learning together. And as we're learning together, one thing that I would like for you guys to really consider is subscribing to the YouTube channel. The subscription to the YouTube channel will allow me to it'll actually allow me to create a link that will be easily it will be easier to transmit. Instead of this long drawn out sequence of numbers and code that I would have to send to people, I can actually send them youtube.com/foundation. But I need to go over a certain amount of subscribers. So not only would I like for you to subscribe, please share with your friends. Believe it or not, share with people who don't believe, because I would rather listen to criticism than empty space. Anything. I'm not sitting here to say, hey, listen, send me all the people who want to argue with me, because, I want to argue back with them. Instead, I want to be able to answer their questions, because I'm pretty sure when somebody has an argument, even in their argument, there's typically a question. Another thing, I'm going to post the Facebook link in the description. So as people subscribe, they will actually be able to go to our Facebook page and check stuff out. Again, thank you so much for listening. I do thank you guys, the very few of you who have been listening to me for right now. Please, again, share share the link on YouTube. Send the video out to people. Let them critique me. If you don't want to do it, I understand. That's perfectly fine. I appreciate you guys so much, and I love you guys so much. And I hope to hear from you guys on our Facebook comment feed or on on the comment feed on our YouTube page. Feel free to ask me a question, and if I can go over a question and then get to a study, even if it goes over a few minutes, I don't have an issue with that. I can make it work. Maybe the question you might ask me might have something to do with one of the up and coming episodes, and hopefully we'll have more of a up and coming list to show, and we'll have more for you guys in the coming weeks. Again, please excuse my absence last week. I will be, of course, trying to get these out to you weekly, every Tuesday morning, and hopefully, if not every Monday night, that would be a lot better. All right, thank you very much, and you guys have a blessed rest of the day.